Welcome to the Intrazone Roadmap Pitstop July 2020 edition. This is a bonus monthly show that answers that burning question in your mind. What's rolling out now for SharePoint and related technology in Microsoft 365? I'm Mark Cashman, Senior Product Manager on the Microsoft 365 marketing team, here to set the ongoing record straight. This month, I talked with John Sanders, a Principal Program Manager on the SharePoint team, focused on all things pages and web parts, most recently aligning with and adopting the improvements for page navigation, using your keyboard with a broader notion and focus on a pervasive accessibility for everyone throughout the intranet. Consider this the message center for everyone. July swooped in with a nice variety of updates, improvements, and new features, and this podcast right now is your time to stay informed and ahead of the ever-curving Microsoft 365 roadmap. Up first, we're going to talk about employee engagement, how you can think about going one-to-many and communicating broadly throughout the intranet. First up, there's a new site template in town, and its name is New Employee Onboarding Hub, or NEO for short. Yes, Agent Smith, I took the red pill a long time ago. The NEO Hub helps organizations, specifically new employees, begin before their first day on the job. It provides those employees with the resources, the support, and the general information they need to get started. It also helps them connect with new employees, the variety of people that they'll work with, the community that they'll work within, and awareness of what the culture is that surrounds them as they adopt into the new company. It also helps stakeholders easily contribute to the new employee onboarding to be able to put in their notes and information where it first hits those new employees as they onboard. To get it, simply head over to the Lookbook site and install it in your tenant today. Speaking of hubs, there is now a centralized management option for hub visitor permissions. This is an optional feature for both hubs and associated sites, which allows for greater viewer access to content and improved discoverability across sites. After enabling a hub to sync to associated sites, hub owners can specify access to individuals, security groups, or Microsoft 365 groups. The new visitor permissions will become activated the next time the viewer accesses the hub. Associated site hub owners can disable the sync for sites that need to remain private from the rest of the hub. More information and good documentation and details for hub owners and for associated site owners. Next is a general availability update to the SharePoint Migration Tool that it now officially supports moving and migrating content from SharePoint Server 2016. The SharePoint Migration Tool is designed to be used for migrations ranging from the smallest set of files to large-scale enterprise migrations, and the SharePoint Migration Tool will help you bring your information to the cloud and take advantage of the latest collaboration, intelligence, and security solutions within Microsoft 365. And just as a roll-up of what the SharePoint Migration Tool can do, it allows you to migrate content from SharePoint and OneDrive from SharePoint Server 2016, SharePoint Server 2013, SharePoint Foundation 2013, SharePoint Server 2010, and SharePoint Foundation 2010. And of course, it also helps you with network and local file shares. So get your content moving and know that no matter what past version of SharePoint Server you have, you can connect it and move your content into Microsoft 365. Let's round out this employee engagement section with a call out about a new intranet resource center. This is a place that makes it easy to harness the power of your intelligent intranet by finding training videos, templates, demos, customer interviews, and more to help you get started. So just head over to aka.ms/intelligentintranet. And just a quick highlight of some of the things you'll find there, really focusing on some of the new articles, is an article called Plan an Intelligent SharePoint Intranet, another one about information architecture in modern SharePoint, one about planning navigation for the modern SharePoint experience, and finally one that's focused on moving from publishing sites to communication sites, or if you like to think of it, the move from classic to modern. There's a lot more details. It's really well laid out, and it's a new asset to really help you plan and move to your new SharePoint-based modern intranet, but really to take full advantage of all of your investments you're making in Microsoft 365 when it comes to a portals and sites perspective, that intelligent intranet. Let's take a pause, move away from employee engagement, and talk with one of our program managers, John Sanders, specifically about the work that he does broadly with pages and web parts, and specifically this month to talk about the SharePoint Pages keyboard shortcuts. It is now time in the IntraZone Roadmap Pitstop July edition to pause and talk with one of our principal program managers who is really focused on a lot of the overall authoring and communication as far as content is concerned, making that a great experience and how you share that with other people. We'll get into really specifically what's shipped this month, but I'd like to invite John Sanders, Principal Program Manager who focuses on SharePoint pages, web parts, and a whole bunch of other things. But John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mark. I appreciate it.
So if I didn't get quite what you're working on, how would you describe to people, here's what I work on these days?
Sure. We have been really focused on building a consumer-grade page authoring experience because the pages are supported by all of our great web parts and by lots of third-party web parts as well, but they're the foundation for telling a beautiful story, right? You can make a site that has pages that communicate what you want, and those sites can be rolled up to hubs. But if that page authoring experience and the components that you want to be on that page aren't easy to use, beautiful, responsive, and accessible, it starts to break down. So that's where we spend a lot of our time right now.
You're just telling me what I already know that SharePoint did a long time ago. I can create pages, use web parts, and all fine and dandy. But I know a lot more is behind that story. So I know you've taken over this charter and have been doing it for quite some time. How would you frame that sort of move into the 21st century for SharePoint when it comes to the broader pages and web parts strategy? How would you pitch that as far as here's what we're going to do, and then of course define it in here's what we're doing currently in the modern world?
Absolutely. We started with, we have this very powerful collection of web parts and capabilities in classic pages, but they weren't the most easy to use. You know, you might bring in an external designer or a developer or a consulting firm to help you build what you needed to build. And while that was wonderful and is still powerful today, it wasn't easy for you to just be Mark, the guy that wants to have a site that talks about what is marketing and product management at Microsoft. It wasn't easy for you to do that. So when we started building modern pages in our modern part story, we wanted it to move from a forms-based publishing model where you maybe build everything in lists and then visualize it somewhere else, to be able to just have a canvas where you could start typing and it would be not only beautiful when you were done, we'd give you enough control that you could tell your story, but that we wouldn't have all kinds of conflicting colors or 27 different fonts. You know, we would help give you some rails to guide you into making beautiful pages. And then those pages would look great on any form factor, right? From a phone to an iPad or Surface, other tablet, to a big desktop.
That's inclusive of a lot of different types of content. I can think of in the past adding an image to a SharePoint page. And today I think of it without having to think about it. But in the past I would have had to go through a couple of hoops and maybe made a deal with a seal that would do the trick for me. But you know, if you think about that, not just articulating what the different web parts are, but really thinking through people leveraging content in the way that just feels natural and intuitive. Where do you see pages now as far as the experience?
I mean, I think our modern page canvas is much easier to use than any of our classic, you know, as we talked about, very powerful, but maybe not as easy to use experiences. But we know we're not done yet, right? So when we started with modern pages, just to use your image example, you had to go to the toolbox and open the toolbox and say, add an image, and we would give you a great file picker to pick your images from a bunch of different places. But now we've done things to add new sources of images to that image file picker. A great example is the Microsoft stock images that we rolled out a couple of months ago, where you have a collection of super high quality images curated by us and licensed for you to use however you need to tell your story. But we can also, now drag and drop an image from the desktop. You can actually copy and paste an image from the web and just paste it right into the canvas, and we'll do the right thing for you. We'll put that image in the right place, and we'll give you the cropping and resizing controls that you want on the canvas. We realize we can probably do even better and even more there, but we think we've come a long way. And like you said, made it so that you don't have to think about it so much. You're writing the words you want, you're pasting images. Another great example, you're pasting URLs. Maybe they're to another site. We'll try and get you a rich preview for that URL when you paste it into the text editor. Or if you grab a stream video URL or a YouTube video URL, we'll actually go out and get the iframe to build that embed and just plop it right on the page for you. So you don't have to go into the toolbox. It just adds that video right to the page for you.
I'm going to throw one last web part at you. I know you know this one very well, but I thought if we could just have that one last little reference to what was classic and what is now modern. Think in terms of something like the content query web part of the past and today's highlighted content web part. They couldn't be any more different in terms of how people use them, one being a lot more simple and one being a lot more complex. But how would you have learned from the value of what people are doing with search and to provide a more dynamic canvas, but moving it into, again, this 21st century, that particular web part's so powerful, and you've made it a lot easier. What was the kind of the basis of the strategy, but also just to explain the improvements we've made there as one last example?
Sure. The biggest thing in the classic world, the first thing you had to do is decide whether you should use queries or search. And I think as just a normal, regular user trying to tell their story on a page, you had no idea why you would want to use content by query or content by search. Again, if you're a more experienced SharePoint user, that was probably a clear question for you. But one of the first things we did as we imagined highlighted content was to say users shouldn't have to make choices like this. We'll have a bunch of data providers under the covers, and based on the things you want to show and where you want to show them from, we'll just select the right data provider. So in that example, if you want to show documents from this site's document library, we do a query that returns those super quickly. It happens to be a camel query, so it would have been a content by query web part. But if you select, I want to show pages and news from these 3 or 4 sites, maybe focused on this keyword or from the author Mark Cashman, we're going to go use search for you automatically. You're not going to need to think about it, and then you're just going to pick how you want that to lay out and what do you want the visual to be on your page as you're telling that story.
So if we stay with the content authoring and kind of start to layer in and get to what it is that we've released this month. On the outset, it's relatively simple in terms of the feature or the update that you've provided, and I'll be blunt with, it's called Pages Keyboard Shortcuts that just helps somebody when they're in an authoring mode navigate through, and if they like using their keyboard and are comfortable with shortcuts, it's now something that's more baked into the modern Pages experience. But can you take us through some of the components of what it is that somebody can do, and then maybe a little bit behind the scenes of how you went about or your team went about building the component and kind of adhering to how you would expect Microsoft would build a component like this, if there are other examples? Sure,
absolutely. One of the things that we focus on quite a bit is accessibility in our pages, right? We don't want you to have to think about making your content accessible. We want that to just be baked into the tool that you're using. So as an example, when you choose one of our section image, our section colored backgrounds, we power that as a site theme color from your site. So you have 4 options there. And then we do the right thing as web parts live on that section to make sure they're accessible and they meet the contrast ratios for the text to the components behind them. Similarly, on other places, we'll either try and find alternative text for you and pop them into the image web part and make a suggestion for you, or we'll provide a place like in the hero web part or in the title region for you to add alternative text for your images there. And throughout all of that, we've had a big collection of keyboard shortcuts to do things. A simple example would be undo redo, right? You're used to using undo redo in other canvases at Microsoft. We've had that undo redo keyboard shortcut for a while, but you maybe didn't know where to get those keyboard shortcuts. So we had a help article for you, but we noticed that some other properties within Microsoft 365 had basically just, shift ? And it would pop up dialog that showed you all the keyboard shortcuts. Good examples there, Outlook Web, and Outlook, the calendar as well as the mail component have a bunch of different keyboard shortcuts accessible through that. Yammer as well, same thing. You hit the question mark on your keyboard and it pops up a collection of keyboard shortcuts. So we thought, wow, this feels like a Microsoft 365 kind of thing. And we have a bunch of keyboard shortcuts as well. Let's just bring this in and make this more standard across our applications.
Yeah, I feel like when you're in the authoring mode and you do the shift question mark, it really is like these days you would ask a bot, what can I do? And so you may have stumbled across something or hit a weird key and just discovered like, oh, I didn't realize I could use my keyboard to navigate or do certain actions. But I really like that it's kind of a menu of options. And when I saw it for the first time, I saw there were a few things that I do use. I'm a Control K, huge advocate of Control K when I want to insert a link because I do that a lot. But the one that I've actually started using that I learned with the keyboard shortcuts pop-up in getting ready for this just in the last week was the tab function, which I do use in a lot of forms, and I use it in a lot of places like Outlook when I'm filling out an email or something like that. And I just honestly didn't know, John, that we could tab through to the different web part zones and just have a better experience instead of clicking, or if I was having trouble choosing where I wanted to go next, the tab just took me right to it.
That is great to hear. I'm glad about that, Mark.
So if we use the tab function to move to the last question, I'm going to hit tab now virtually and move us to my last question, which was, I heard you say a couple of times in your other examples that to me sounds like, smells like accessibility. We are talking about highlighting and up-leveling the visibility on what shortcuts are available, and that there's a pervasive way, kind of the language to display to people what the keyboard shortcuts are. But there's a lot that you've described in how you've brought a broader awareness to modern pages, the web parts, how they work, responsive by design, built in a way, that they're accessible more from a feature perspective. But there's that other side of it of just how people interact with pages, whether they're creating the page or consuming the page. And that I know of, since now a number of years back, that broader guidance from Satya on down through all the product groups is that accessibility is something you plan for and build and design from the beginning, not as an end game, but really from the start. How would you say that the approach of even something like keyboard shortcuts, being able to navigate a SharePoint page more easily, especially if you are dependent on navigating a page in a different way than what we've been talking about, how does it play into that assistive technology, and how maybe your team thinks about that with each feature or each next iteration that you're bringing to SharePoint page experiences?
Absolutely. We actually have sort of two different ways we look at accessibility. And like you said, we do think about it from the very beginning. So the first thing is when your page is published, we want that page to act like any other HTML page on the intranet, right? So you shouldn't have to know that it's a collection of web parts or that it's a powered by search or a query or it's an image, right? It should just be like every other page that you're scanning as an assistive technology user, whether that's using keyboard shortcuts or you're using screen readers. We need to adhere to what other pages look like in view mode. And so we spend quite a bit of time on each new feature going through and testing that, both in Narrator and for previous iterations, we would also test in some other screen reading technologies. And then for the authoring experience, it was sort of new territory for us, right? So when you think about the idea of, we have sections on these pages and they're sort of like lists, but maybe not. And then within those, you have web parts. So we designed a model that we adhere to in all of our new web parts, as you tab through your sections and you jump to your web parts, and then you hit enter to get within the context of that web part. And then we work with our other accessibility teams in other Microsoft 365 products to make sure that we're making our authoring experiences roughly the same across the products, because it is a very different experience as a page author, tabbing through and entering your web parts and then configuring those web parts, maybe jumping over to the property pane. All of those have authoring experience rules that kind of trap you in individual places. That's not a bad thing, but basically so that you're not jumping around the page oddly. You're now in the property pane, and then you can escape out of that and get back to another context. So you've got a way to think through how you author the page that is consistent across Microsoft's products. And then once that page is published, again, anyone that's consuming that page treats it just like a regular web page. There's nothing special or magic about it. It follows all of the normal models for having headers and titles and jump areas, etc.
So, John, I heard you say one thing that was kind of new to me, but it resonates, is that you're designing for predictability, and that is for the end user as they navigate pages, that should be a consistent experience. But as they jump from different applications within the Microsoft 365 portfolio, the approach that we take to accessibility, to navigating a page, to how keyboard shortcuts work, to then how that gets consumed and applies to something like a screen reader, the predictability part is super important, and hopefully it's something that they depend on so that as they're moving through their workday and working with different people on different pieces of content, sometimes a SharePoint page, sometimes an Outlook email, that we are making it easier for them to both context switch and switch applications, which I didn't really think about the predictability side. So again, I learned about tabs through the tool, and I'm learning through you about the predictability of the approach that you're taking.
So one other thing I might mention, Mark, is we've actually added in-product feedback for our page authors, where periodically, as you've authored a page, right after you're done, we will launch a little survey. Internally, we call that our feature promoter score, which is your 1 to 5 score. How did we do to earn your business? And would you suggest this page authoring capability to a friend? And then within that, we have these verbatims, basically where you'll write down specifics, like, we love the new image drag and drop, or, man, I really wish you had X, Y, and Z. And we take that, we put that into a machine learning model, and we look for groupings of content, and then that really feeds the next areas that we start to work on. That obviously in conjunction with other listening signals we have, like our user voice channel or feedback from our MVPs. Folks also hit me up on Twitter. All of the above are super useful, but I would definitely ask if you do get that survey in page and you have something to tell us, good or bad, we would love to hear it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We'll make sure to call that out in the show notes, that if you want any improvements to pages and web parts, make sure that you send that feedback or find John on Twitter. He's super responsive. I've seen him. Lots of ways to get a hold of John and his team, and certainly use your voice, use your text, use your tweets. So, John, thanks for explaining more about what shipped this week, the keyboard shortcuts, but also for all the work that you do with pages and web parts. And I hope you have I think you're in the middle of Fix, Hack, Learn week, and so maybe some new ideas came out that we'll see soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mark. And yes, it is Fix, Hack, Learn week. So we've got a bunch of great hacks across the company, and particularly in our OneDrive and SharePoint teams. So I'm gonna get back to hacking.
Excellent. Well, hack away, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mark.
It's always great to talk with John. He takes a very thoughtful approach with very much the customer experience in mind, and he truly means it. If you have any feedback, send it to him in any form, and if he can adapt it, learn from it, and make it better so that the pages and web parts experience are more accessible, both from how people can navigate the page, what type of content they can use, but really it is how to represent your content in the best way forward so that you can represent what it is that your message is in the way that you want to. Let's move now into teamwork. How do people work together, and what does Microsoft offer month over month to improve the experience of how people collaborate with each other across boundaries, across content types, in a lot of different formats? The first one is a big one. It's a new app that we call Microsoft Lists for Microsoft 365. We started rollout this month with the new app in Microsoft 365. You'll see it in your Microsoft 365 app launcher. And along with that, a new list creation experience that comes with it, 8 ready-made templates. We're really excited to have gotten started to begin rollout with Microsoft Lists and really have a tool for you to help organize, collaborate, and share. If you start using it, you will find that it is a quick and easy way to start a list. You can bring in existing lists. If you've been using SharePoint lists for a while, we also want to be clear that Microsoft Lists is an evolution of SharePoint lists. So no matter if you've had existing lists or you're just getting started, the new Microsoft Lists app in Microsoft 365 will be a great starting place to aggregate all of your lists or to start new ones. We'll be very loud about all the innovation that's coming. We've announced and pre-disclosed a lot of things, but I'll put a link in the show notes that will take you to learn more about the holistic approach to what we're doing with Microsoft Lists. But again, very excited to start rolling out to targeted release customers with more information about what the rollout's cadence will be. We'll stay with lists for a little while because by nature of it being an evolution of SharePoint lists, we also have just been updating a lot of the common list experiences. So let's talk about some of the new improvements to the quick edit experience. There is now an option to have a fixed row height. So when you're in quick edit, you will see a new layout option called fixed height. And what this allows you to have is a more, to be able to optimize the vertical space to be able to then have that be the same for all of your row items. There's also an improved row selection. You will see an updated way for selecting either single or multiple items, and this too supports the existing copy-paste, drag to fill. It's applicable to multiple rows when using the shift selection, and when navigating and interacting via keyboard shortcuts, similar to what we talked to John Sanders about, gives you that consistent keyboard navigation approach even within Quick Edit now. There were also a number of visual updates. You will see new grid lines, an improved on-hover experience when you're using your mouse around the grid. There are themed color bars on the side of list items, including error messages, and you can now create a new item by using the Create New Item button that's at the bottom of the Quick Edit experience for creating new items in line, and an updated column header drop-down menus. So think of this work that we're doing within Quick Edit as a way to bring it to parity when you're not in Quick Edit, so that if you're doing bulk edits or you're wanting to work in a more proficient way across a lot of different rows and items, that you can now accomplish a lot of the basics and have that same experience. And the last one is a new technology that we brought to the regular experience when you're in the grid mode, but we brought now in Quick Edit the sticky first column. As users scroll horizontally across a list when they're in quick mode, you'll see that the far left column remains in place as you navigate through all the different columns, especially when you have more than about 7 or 8 columns on your common resolution. It really is helpful to have that first one in place to reference which row item you're working on. So there's a lot of recent innovation with Quick Edit. Absolutely encourage you, if you've never used Quick Edit, to go into Quick Edit mode and see how fast it is that you can work with your data to make updates in bulk and truly accomplish tracking and managing your information at scale. Okay, we're not done with lists yet. Picture this. There is now an improved image column for both SharePoint lists, libraries, and of course, as we evolve into Microsoft Lists, this will be available in Microsoft Lists as well. We've improved the image upload experience, which includes the mobile camera support. You simply add a new image column and upload an image for that list, item, or file. This is a default column when you're using something like the new Asset Manager template, or it's an easy column to add if you want to track and add an image, even in a library. So the image that you're tracking may be the image file in the library, but you can also add an image column if you wanted to associate an image to either a list item or a file in a document library. Last on the list of lists improvements in July 2020 is the ability to rename the title column. Title is, I know, such a good column, title, and now you are entitled and empowered to rename it to whatever suits your fancy. What you want to call it is a good title, so do it. Rename that title column and see the name change appear consistently in Quick Edit, on the associated view, and in the list form. And just historically, if you're new to lists, the title column has always been one that we haven't enabled you to rename. Now you can rename it like you can any other column header or the title for that column. Let's end the teamwork section on a security feature for files. You can now automatically block guest access to new OneDrive and SharePoint files until after the security scans are complete. So to break this down, you can enable data loss prevention DLP to automatically block external access to new files in SharePoint and OneDrive until those files have been fully scanned by the service for sensitive information. This includes the search freshness and indexing. If the file has no sensitive content based on the DLP policy, then guests can access the file. If the policy identifies a file with sensitive content, then guests continue to be prohibited from accessing the file. Note, there is no change to existing restrictions on guest user access to sensitive files. On this one, there is a lot of information just generically about data loss prevention. This is an aspect of the broader security story, but it is an improvement in terms of really locking down the focus of until a scan is complete, no sharing, especially now with guests, would be provided or allowed. With that, let's move on to related technology. The first related technology that I want to share is tasks in Teams. This is a coherent task management experience in your hub for teamwork, Teams. The new Tasks experience brings together Microsoft Planner and Microsoft To Do into Teams, giving you one place to manage your team plans and your individual tasks. We did a special episode on the Intrazone called Tasks in Microsoft Teams, and this is a podcast that's now out and available. We talked with Howard Crow, who is a partner GPM on the engineering side, focused on Planner and now Tasks in Teams, and his peer Xin-Yi Lim, who is my peer, product marketing manager, focused also on Planner and Tasks in Teams. It's a really nice aggregated approach to getting a view on all of your tasks, whether they are your individual tasks or the ones that are assigned to you as a part of a team. The next related technology is Add to OneDrive. And don't we love OneDrive? Why not add more to it? Add to OneDrive enables you to add shared folder shortcuts directly to your OneDrive. Shared folders include content that others may have shared with you through their OneDrive, or content that's a part of a shared library in Microsoft Teams or SharePoint. With Add to OneDrive, not only can you bring all of your shared content into one place, but you can also work with the shared content with the same power and flexibility as if they are your own files in your own OneDrive. This means that the added content can be synced, shared, and collaborated on, and that it retains all existing security and compliance policies. Once added, the Add to OneDrive shortcuts show up in the OneDrive for the web, within the Windows file experience for OneDrive or Mac Finder, in Teams, and in the OneDrive mobile apps. There's a lot of great content out there, and bring it closer to the fold within your OneDrive by adding it to OneDrive. The next one is new innovation from Microsoft Stream. You can now remove unwanted background noise from videos. Really, though, the outcome is the ability to focus a person on who is speaking and not what's happening around them, background noise. Like imagine if somebody to record on a work site and all of the work site background noise was happening, but it really was the voice that you needed to hear. The noise suppression, removing that from the background, is really some amazing technology for Microsoft Stream. When you hear it, truly, you really hear it. You hear the person. The next thing I want to highlight is some on-demand training that we have now made available. This covers OneDrive, SharePoint, Microsoft Lists, Project Cortex, Yammer, Stream. There are 14 sessions that we want to help train your mind. Once you've trained your mind, you know the tech will follow. These 14 videos cover a lot of different aspects of how to use SharePoint, the benefits of OneDrive, what's new with Microsoft Lists, all the innovation that we're doing with the integration with Microsoft Teams, an update on Project Cortex, and don't miss it, there is a keynote from Jeff Teeper that provides a great summary across a lot of great contextual scenarios that Microsoft 365 supports across teamwork and across employee engagement. There's a great big blog post that has all the videos in one, so you can consume them at your leisure. And again, a lot of great training in one consolidated place. The last thing in related technology is related technology in a way. Carrying on from the Twitter I had a joke meme you may have seen, I thought I'd share a few related to SharePoint and OneDrive, and I will start with my own attempt to join the meme. My attempt was, I'm working on a OneDrive joke and thinking about a good punchline. Here's one from Microsoft MVP Paul Bullock. Paul tweeted, "You have to hear my modern SharePoint joke. It's absolutely classic." That was one of my favorites. And last is one from our friend and CVP, Jeff Teeper. Jeff tweeted, "I have a SharePoint joke and you can customize it." I'll put all these tweets out there. There's a lot of them. If you like the ones about SharePoint and OneDrive, there's a lot to be had there. But just type in your favorite product name and the word joke in search and start a scrolling and possibly LOLing. Okay, time to close your eyes and visualize the future. 1 month from now, here's 2 teasers for what's coming soon in August 2020. Teaser number 1, the new sharing experience in Microsoft Teams. Let me repeat that one because this one's been a long time coming and there's some really great work that the Microsoft Teams team has been doing with the Files team. The new sharing experience in Microsoft Teams. Teaser number 2, Azure CDN caching for SharePoint and OneDrive videos. This makes it so that for whatever purpose you're putting a video to share with other people that's not maybe really meant for Microsoft Stream, but it's a video that you take with you and sometimes show in different ad hoc meetings or maybe at different events. When you serve those up from SharePoint and OneDrive, we want those to be a great streaming experience. That's it with the teasers. We'll share more within the full SharePoint Roadmap Pitstop August 2020 edition next month. We've added a list of important resource links in the show notes and in the corresponding blog post on the Microsoft Tech community within the SharePoint community blog, giving you all that you need to get up to speed and stay ahead and get into the depth of everything that really piqued your interest. I hope you've enjoyed this Roadmap Pitstop. Time to relax knowing that you're all caught up. If anything seems funny or confusing, please send us your comments and please continue to ask questions. We're here to put our and your best change management foot forward. Until next month, may your fiscal year 21 Q1 continue to be smooth and productive.